eventually you face down enough challenges and you just start saying, okay, what's next? Like, and I never went hungry. I never um, had any major catastrophes that we couldn't handle. It was almost like an incubator. It was an oasis to be out there and to recognize that there's a deeper work going on in terms of my character and in my um, humility, that I need to step back and I need to face that and I need to wrestle with who am I and what am I put here to do and how do I step into that and extract the lessons from this season of life that can help me help other people. And boy, our character is the most forged, I think, in the difficult seasons rather than the comfortable ones. And so, the number of lessons I was able to pull out of that season has been something that I can't not help people with now, because they're painful lessons, but it's that facing down the tension between me and my wife at that point of my willingness and eagerness to get my hand back in the entrepreneur ring to do something, and she had a longer on ramp or a slower burn to be willing to even entertain that. It was so devastating.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to or back to the Men on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Ian Lobos. And today on the show, I've got a great guest, Christian Elliott. He is, man, the guy's impressive in a resume. Yet what we're going to talk about today is about triumph and tragedy and failure and succeeding through it and pushing yourself and challenging yourself. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. I want to read Christian's bio because he's what an interesting story he's going to tell us today, and amazing lessons from that story. And I was really happy on this thing. I was really just interested in hearing the human's struggle, the human's triumph, the little moments that he made different little tiny tweaks and changes that changed his whole trajectory. It's so interesting. And I get a lot of fan feedback when we have stuff like this. So I'm excited for you to hear it too. So if you were watching on YouTube, by the way, this is our new Quitters Club logo and shirt. If you want one, email or DM me or Aaron, and we'll get one out to you. So Christian Elliott is the CEO of True Whole Human. He and his wife have helped thousands of people achieve their health and physique goals. And since 2005, he's also done over 15,000 hours on one-on-one coaching sessions with his clients. He runs a popular blog called Deconstructing Conventional, which has been featured in Men's Health, Men's Fitness, Huffington Post, CBS, and a ton of other major news outlets. So today, Christian and I are going to talk about his journey from, building this incredible business from a little tiny startup and 9 years into it, into this incredible business, and a legal issue with a landlord bankrupting him, and how his whole life, literally 4 kids, wife, and his wife was his business partner, everything changed in that moment. And so we're going to spend the whole hour talking about Christian's story and his faith and his trust in himself and in his religion and his wife's trust in him. And we're going to break some things down and how he did things. We're going to break down the whys. It's a really cool episode. I really had a lot of fun getting to know Christian and just listening to his story. I love that stuff. And I know you guys do too. So things we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about, like, what am I supposed to be learning in this season of life? I know a lot of you go through some tough stuff, and that's a great question to ask yourself. So we're going to talk about clean slate, scaling your business, slowing down, learning skills that you didn't know you needed, focusing into the next challenge. We're going to talk about extreme ownership and taking everything on yourself. I'm not talking about leverage in that. I'm talking about owning what's going on and what you've caused because of your choices. We're going to talk about regret now versus the future. We're going to talk about setting goals and moving the goalposts or goalposts that continue to move, being intentional with learning, the value of mentorship, removing distractions and being present, personal development strategies. I'm going to tell you about some of the exercises that Aaron and I use that you can get free if you are on our or in our Men on Purpose community or our Quitters Club community. You can get them for free, like our future stage presentation. So that's it. That's Christian Elliott. You're going to love this episode. Really appreciate you listening. And I know you're going to have fun on this one. So enjoy. All right, Christian, let's do this thing, man. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, our pleasure. Our pleasure. So, I want to dig into your professional stuff in just a bit. Beginning this episode, I'd like to dig into the personal side and go way back and just figure out what messed you up, man. For lack of a
How long
better
do you have? Yeah.
for a lack of a better phrase, what messed you up when you were a kid? And because that's what the audience they want that. They need that. They need to know that like I was telling you before we started recording, they need to know that we're not special and they're not unique. Everybody is unique in their own little story, yet the stuff that happens to us, that's not unique. It happens to everybody. Now, maybe not to the degree that it happened to someone else. However, the way that you got it, told yourself the story, allowed the trauma to set in,
Mhm.
that's on you,
Oh, for sure.
you
Yeah.
know?
No, I mean, none of us get to go through this life without some rough patches or some identity quakes where you really start
Sure.
questioning a lot of what you thought you knew or tools that you use to get to where you are that don't serve you anymore. And
Right,
now you got
right.
to try something else for sure.
Yeah, so take
Okay.
us back, man. And by the way, audience, I don't have an agenda here. It's not like Christian has some like crazy story that I'm leading into. I'm very curious.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So short version, I grew up in a Christian home. Really had, I've never left the faith. So I never had this faith quake. I never had this idea of like, no, this isn't, leaving that and kind of trying to find my way spiritually. I'm fortunate to say that has been my anchor that has gotten me through some pretty tough stretches of life. So,
Sure.
um, went
Can I
to,
ask you a question real quick?
sure.
What is it about that makes it an anchor? Is it trust? Is it faith? Is it a belief in something higher power? What is that makes it an anchor for you?
Yeah, it's been a few, I guess a couple things. One is I studied early on, I studied apologetics and I studied, defense of the faith. I studied what the other philosophies are out there. And if you get into creation evolution debates, and usually creationists are on the defensive, you turn it around on somebody that thinks from an evolutionary perspective and you ask them questions they can't answer, and suddenly now we're having an honest conversation. And
Right.
so I've never found better answers to the meaningful questions of life than a Christian perspective
Hmm.
on where this world came from, who sets the standards for morals and ethics, where we're going. And so even in the tough seasons of life, I couldn't doubt it all the way to be like, yeah, God doesn't exist, and maybe this whole thing doesn't matter. And that part, fortunately, didn't get disrupted, and it gave me some level of stability to say, I can't pretend God doesn't exist. I can't pretend that He's not loving.
Sure.
I just don't understand this. I have to figure out what is it that I'm supposed to be learning in this season of life. And as you wrestle with that, as you anchor to the difficult parts of the questions that you haven't been faced with yet, the way that you had God in a box and thought you understood the world, and you realize He's a lot bigger and His ways are a lot higher, and He's more interested in your personal growth and in your becoming more like Him than He is in the how comfortable your life is. He's more interested in refining you. That To be able to say, I don't understand this, but I trust you, and I'm going to do my best to be faithful as I walk through this. That was something that helped me get through really what the darkest season of my life was only about 5 years ago.
Mm.
So my wife and I had you know, I went to college, went to grad school, actually went to seminary, got a master's of divinity, and had kind of this, what am I going to do with my life? You pay a lot of money to get an education for a job that doesn't pay you very much.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my health was starting to fall apart. And I really had to get back in front of it. I just got married, and I'm thinking, geez, if this fast forwards, I'm going to be a mess by the time I'm 50. And so I was almost forced to learn what I did not know about health. And um, that journey really changed the trajectory of life. It gave me a eye for what does it take to heal? What else that's this dramatic that I am clueless about? And it became a profession. It started as a quest to get my health back, and then it turned into a hobby helping other people. And then people started wanting to pay me for it. And eventually we started a simple business of 400 square feet, and then it became 800 square feet, and then it became 2 3,000 square feet, and eventually grew to 10,000. And we had about a 9-year run of brick and mortar locations, and just about every type of holistic health discipline you can think of, and fitness and nutrition and chiropractic and acupuncture and massage and naturopathy. And so we had quite an impressive growth trajectory in what we had been through. But like anything, especially if you throw your hand in the entrepreneur ring, there's not much else that has an opportunity to knock you down a few pegs than cutting your teeth as a business professional. Um, and so at the end of 2007, and somewhere in 2017, we unexpectedly had to close the business. It was a dream that
Hmm.
we had fostered for years. And um, so I talk about a gut wrenching season of life. I had to file
Yeah,
bankruptcy
man.
and had to.
Oh shit.
Um, I'm 41 years old at this point. I've got a wife and 4 kids, and when you file bankruptcy, they don't give you much. You don't get to keep much of anything.
Right,
And
right.
so you're. I started over with a clean slate, and that turns into the dark night of the soul pretty quick. When you're like,
Yeah,
how in the world am I going to take care of these 4 kids and this wife in one of the most expensive cities in the country? And what my resume wasn't particularly impressive. It was, I just hustle and get things done, and I find opportunity everywhere I go. And so having to close that, where I thought my life was going was not where it was going. And that um, sudden change of direction, and the clean slate moment gave me the chance to say, okay, if I am going to move forward and I have an opportunity to be choosy about what goes on my slate and what kind of life do I really want. Not many people get this do-over moment in life, or this forced do-over moment where you have an opportunity to really rethink everything
sure.
and say, well, then where am I going to go with all of this? And so I can tell you plenty of stories. It was about a 3-year run
Wow.
to get back in front of that, and there's so many plot points. I even wrote a blog post about it, just to kind of, when COVID really started, of I was slowly starting to come out of that really intense season and had extracted so many lessons of hardship that were relatable. So I just wrote about it in hopes to be helpful to other people who were feeling their life not being near as in control as they were
Sure.
used to. So,
All right, so now we gotta go back, man, because I did not see that in your bio.
okay.
And I really want to dig into that because it's like that's scary. The situation you describe
Hmm.
is scary, and now I want to know what happened. And so go back to it was the 400 square feet, then it was 800 square feet, and this was 15 years ago.
Yeah,
How
we
long ago?
started about 2008. We started a brick and mortar location.
Okay,
So,
got it. And then things took off, and you were offering
hmm
all these modalities, all these different services, and business
hmm
was flying. Business was amazing.
yeah,
And then around that 2007-8 period, no,
17.
2017 period, like what goes down? That's like you got my curiosity radars
Oh man,
pinging.
well, it's normal in business. When you expand, you have the kind of the expected hockey stick, they call it, where
Sure.
you've invested and you've poured your effort into something, and you do it well, and you come up out of it, and you hit your inflection point. And we were just hitting that. Like we had just started to breathe and be like, yeah, well, like this, it's working. We had membership programs that were doing well, and a growing base of clients, and had short versions of landlord issues that um, more or less blindsided us and garnished our bank accounts and took
Whoa.
what we had. And I found out afterward, if I had the right legal help, I would have won that. But I didn't find anybody that knew how to combat that. Or he told me, because the landlord was actually the one that wrote the lease wrong, I
Mm,
just didn't know how to stand my
yeah,
ground. They would have lost, and I would have been, who knows where this would be. But
sure.
this is the trajectory we hit. And so here we are. And
Well, you
that,
brought up a good point that I don't want to gloss over for a second. And
hmm
my lawyer said the same thing to me. My new lawyer that I got a
hmm
couple years ago. And I've been through some shit lawyers. And
hmm
my lawyer Alex, who probably will listen to this, is fantastic. I really like the way that he does his work and cares for me and understands me as a human and what I want in life and the type of lifestyle that I live. And isn't it doesn't have an agenda for himself, for just
hmm
billing. And what he said to me is, look, man, like the problem you had with your former partner, I had a partner steal a shit ton of money. Um, that probably could have been avoided with the proper contract. And there could have been a lot of legal ramifications on him that we would have just automatically gone through if you had the right contract. And so, like, let this be a lesson to anybody that's listening who's going through this inner turmoil of like, should I have an attorney look at this? I'm pretty smart. I think I can do it. No, maybe I should. Oh, no, no, no. It's too much money. I shouldn't. Let Christian and I warn you. You
Yes.
need to have, even if it's like, hey, can I pay you $150 just to review this contract? Like, negotiate with an attorney. Just get another
Hmm.
set of eyes on it because you don't want the ramifications, which you're about to tell us about.
Well, yeah, and then even for in my defense, I did have an attorney look at it. I did have somebody
Oh,
look at it, and what you find out is they're not all created equal. What
yeah,
one sees is something the other one misses, and or their expertise is like whether you're playing a guitar, whether you're a doctor, a trainer, whatever. There's just different levels of expertise, and so I guess the lesson I'd piggyback on top of yours is do your best to vet the person and find
yeah,
out how good they are at their craft. But yeah, you're right. From there, it was a um, multi-month process. I had the option to go work as a general manager at a big chain gym, not making enough money, making enough money to pay the rent and
yeah,
nothing else,
yeah.
which meant we would have had to give up homeschooling our kids because my wife would have to get a job, or they wouldn't even let me take a second job. And that was, looking in that city with the resume or skills I had of the jobs I could find, nothing would do anything to cover just a comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, we had a friend who's a former, she used to work for me, and she had a house out in the country about an hour and a half away
Wow.
that was just that needed somebody to be there and tend it and take care of it. And so they just blessed us and said, just go, just take care of the house and catch your breath. And um, that house needed us as much as we needed it.
Yeah.
It was such a mutually um, good scenario for us to do that. And um, that old farmhouse built in the 1870s
Wow.
that had a lot of quirks and charms and cold winters and um, space for big questions and space for bugs and space for me to live a completely different life. I lived in cities my whole life, just big cities, and didn't have
Right.
any frame of reference for what it would be like to live in the country or what it'd be like to have a slower pace or why people like small towns.
Yeah.
And to be able to be out there and breathe. And the first night we're there to hear crickets, we're like, whoa, that's different. There's crickets
It's so
here.
cool,
And
man.
right. And so we just developed a toughness of by being there. We developed an appreciation. My gosh, when they strip everything away from you and we were on food stamps. My wife had to get a job as a checker at Target.
Jeez.
We had to I found whatever odd jobs I could. We were driving to a food bank to get food, in this mad rush. As soon as you open the door, it's like cattle running in there, and you got to grab what you can get. And
Yep.
so it's it's the depths of like your pride. You're like, okay, well, there's nothing else to like. Why not? I get to show up at the grocery store with a food stamp card, and
How was that
so
affecting you mentally? Like, what were you going through in terms of your ego? I mean, you're a successful guy. You built this great business, and now it's a freaking landlord issue that takes you down. And now you're living in some podunk town and in the country in some old farmhouse, eating on food stamps. Like that's a hell of a blow.
no, it is, and what I guess to my comments earlier, it rattles you because I'm saying to God, I know you could fix this. I know you could help me find customers. I know you could zing me with the questions that I need to entertain in order to have a breakthrough and not go through
I have a question on that.
three. Yeah,
I have a
go
question on
ahead.
that. Why 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 ask for that? Like, I know you can, get me customers. I know you can do this. Why wouldn't you, or why didn't you step back and say, "All right, I get you put me here. Let me
Hmm.
figure out why." Did you ever think about that? Did you ever process that one?
Yeah, eventually I
Yeah.
came to it eventually, but initially you're just like, I have
Scramble mode.
as an entrepreneur, like you probably get it. We just go solve problems. We're like, okay, I need to.
Yeah.
That's what's next. I'll go figure out a way to create something and sell it and put some food on the table. And so my my humbling came in realizing, okay, there's a bunch of skills I don't have in order to be able to pivot this fast. And um, in my naivety at that point, I wanted God to come in and just help me quickly find the customers because I know I'm good at coaching and changing people's lives, and I can get in the weeds and I can find what's blocking you and I can clear it. And yet, um, I had to learn marketing, which meant I had to learn a depth of human nature. I had to
Sure.
learn tech and platforms and gluing them together and all of this other what sounds like superfluous stuff. And what I found going through that is it was a 3 year. I had this idea 12, 18 months. I got this, and nope.
3 years.
There's just so much to learn. And how do you stand out in a marketplace? And so it was 3 years of barely making it. And eventually you face down enough challenges and you just start saying, okay, what's next? And I never went hungry. I never um, had any major catastrophes that we couldn't handle. It was almost like an incubator. It was an oasis to be out there and to recognize that there's a deeper work going on in terms of my character
Sure.
and in my um, humility, that I need to step back and I need to face that and I need to wrestle with who am I and what am I put here to do and how do I step into that and extract the lessons from this season of life that can help me help other people. And boy, our character is the most forged, I think, in the difficult seasons rather than the comfortable ones. And so, the number of lessons I was able to pull out of that season has been something that I can't not help people with now because
Sure.
they're painful lessons, but it's that facing down the tension between me and my wife at that point of my willingness and eagerness to get my hand back in the entrepreneur ring to do something, and she had a longer on ramp or a slower burn to be willing to even entertain that. It was so devastating for her and for both of us really, but it just like she needed more space, and the idea of being in business with me again, it's just like I don't know if I ever want to do that.
Sure.
And we had to work through the emotional pieces between the two of us of what it meant and what we were choosing and what does a life together look like. And there's not many of the opportunities to face the biggest questions in life that urgently and with raw emotion, with lesser skills to do it well. But we just knew we were committed to faith and we were committed to each other. And despite the arguments and the struggle and the her willingness to work at Target rather than other things we could have done, or she was cleaning homes for people, and it
Sure.
was just um, there's a lot to talk through. And in hindsight, we needed the time. We needed that to make us who we became, or to launch us into what we do today. And we wouldn't be the same people without that.
Yeah. What about what's interesting is some of the tougher things I've been through with my dad. I've been through a 2008 downturn, and we held on for as long as we could with his shipping company, and I eventually had to leave it in 2012. And it's still, my dad still has it, does extremely well today, and it's because we focused up his energy and what he spends his time on. Got too wide. Just for the audience to know, like when you get too spread out, when you get too wide and you start taking on all these different things, you get distracted and you lose focus on the one thing that you should be doing. That will then spur up the leverage, the money, the resources, the opportunity, time, energy to then do those next things while this thing's kind of spinning on its own. So what my
Mm-hmm.
dad used to say to me, like in the, leaving his business, or the thing that happened to us in 2019, was, listen, if you focus on why it happened, or you focus on why you're severely wasting time and being super selfish to what the world needs to know from what you've learned from this. So you've
Mm-hmm.
gone through it. It sucks. We get it. Nobody's denying that. Now you can either look left at the blame and it's that person's fault and why me, or you can look right and say, okay, I got this happened and I learned this, and I can teach people through this modality or this piece. I can teach people this. I can teach somebody to not have to experience this. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go do that. And when you focus on that, a whole different energy comes from you. And instead
Yeah.
of being bitter and resentful and regretful and angry, you go to, okay, I got a whole new experience I can tell people about, and I can tell you, hey, this is how I got through it. This is how my wife and I were able to survive that when she was 7 months pregnant, or she was really, well, no, she's probably 5 months pregnant at that time. And we
Hmm.
had a little 3-year-old, and there wasn't a bat of an eyelash when I said to my wife, she, listen, truth be told, I was having a drink out in the back porch after being at the bank for 4 hours trying to figure out where $700,000 was. Well, it was gone. And I was just hoping that one of those hours the bank manager would go, "Oh, I am so sorry. We had the wrong account. Here it is. It's there. No, don't worry. You don't have to
Hmm.
jump out of a window today," which honestly, I've never been a suicidal person. I understood in that moment. I was so terrified that I had just failed so many people, that the
Hmm.
pain inside was so great and the panic was so great that I thought, I now know why people try and take their lives, because they're trying to end this pain inside and they don't want to take their life. They just want to take away that pain. And again, I've never been suicidal. Wasn't at that point. I just kind of understood what other people might be experiencing. And so
Yeah.
I go home and I go on the back porch and I start chain smoking some cigarettes and drinking some drinks and thinking, how the hell am I going to get out of this one? Like, what did I do? How no one's going to trust me again. My reputation's ruined. But I didn't do anything, but it was that guy, you know? And my wife came out and she's like, "What's up?" And I said, "The bank account's empty. The business operating account, like all the draw money, all the investors' money is gone, and I'm not sure what to do." She goes, "Well, I trust you that you're going to figure it out." And I said, "I will." She goes, "Good." And she walked back inside. And it wasn't like a snide, bitchy remark. She really trusted me. And I can tell you at that moment, it was a turning point for me. At that moment, I had trust for her that I had never felt before, because I was like,
Hmm.
holy shit, even in the worst of times, she has not one wavering notion about me. That is amazing. That's a partnership. And so we figured everything out together. And I can tell you that if we hadn't worked on who we were, which then subsequently helped us grow our marriage, our relationship, our partnership, we would have not survived something like that. And it sounds
Hmm.
like you guys needed something like that to kind of bring you back down to earth. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I
Okay.
think on some level, there's a even hearing you frame it that way, that was almost merciful that we didn't have the opportunity for pity parties. We don't
Yeah.
have time for that. Like,
No, you didn't have
we got to
time. No,
figure
no,
it out
no.
now.
No. No. I tell you what, man, like I wanted a pity party. I wanted someone to call me and go, "Hey man, come on over. I got a check for you. Don't worry about anything." I just wanted that.
Right.
And I called my dad and I said, "This is what happened. I'm not sure what to do." And he goes, "Okay, well, you know whose fault this is?" And I said, or he said, "You know whose foot this ball came off of?" Because what he used to say to me was, if you kick a ball down a hill, this is plain and simple. This is about owning shit. This is about extreme ownership. You kick a
Hmm.
ball down a hill and you just hope that it would just go down the hill and go into a lake. Yet it hit a rock that you didn't know was there, and it smashed a car window and then hit an old lady and broke her hip, and then went through a traffic light and two cars collided because they were trying to avoid the ball, and then it hit the water. Every single thing from the time it left your foot is your fault. It's on you. And
Yeah.
that's hard for some people to imagine. And so I wanted that pity party. I wanted to blame somebody. And my dad goes, "This is on you. This is the everything is because it's everything after the ball, even your foot is on you." And I said, "How is that?" And he goes, "Because I asked you how much you trusted that guy, and you said 90%. And I told you trust is 100 or zero. If it's not 100,
Hmm.
walk away from the situation. And at that moment, you chose to kick the ball. And so now, for however long it takes you to clean this mess up, which by the way, I still am dealing with this shit yesterday, three
Hmm.
years later, it's on me and I can't be pissed off. It is my fault. I chose that and I have to just continue to clean the mess up that I caused or created by kicking that ball down the hill very innocently. Yet
Yeah.
I know why I chose that partner, because I was insecure. I didn't have as much confidence as I do today in myself, even though I looked like it and I acted like it. It didn't come from the inside. It came from false exterior. Cars, money, success. That's where my confidence came from. And so I think about your story in that, yeah, you didn't have any time to suffer or to have a pity party. You just had to get right to work. I mean, what about your kids, man? What about what do you tell them? How old were they, by the way, at that point?
Yeah. So my kids were, let's see, 4 years ago. So 10, 8, 3-1, I think. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to hear later in life how much they remember of that. But what I do know is that place was a gift to them. They thrived. They had freedom. They could be free range and go out in the country. And they have these rose colored glasses of that era of life. They don't see the hole in the floor and the creaky stairs, and they just see adventure everywhere they
Yeah.
go. They saw um, a chance to be with mom and dad more, and to um, look at the world through a deck. There's a tree swing, and there's
That's so
just
cool.
adventure everywhere they went. So I don't know. I think they were, when we left that house, they were sad. They're like, oh no, it's like they that was what they knew, and they had such good memories there,
Yeah.
which may have been the biggest gift that my wife and I got out of that, was just watching them flourish and come alive, and to get closer with them through that process, where we had to have more authentic conversations with them, where they got to see us be emotional, where they got to learn why daddy's working late, or what the different things are that we had to do to overcome it. And there's something about the struggle that bonds people.
Sure.
And on some level, we became closer as a family because of that. So,
How did you process through, like, not anger? How did you process through the, man, I don't want to do this. Like, I just want to be at home with my kids. I don't want to work late tonight. I'm missing opportunities with them. I'm missing time with them. How did you process through that one?
well, for me, I what we came to when we were making our decision: do I take a job that isn't going to pay the bills, and we can maybe go deeper in debt and give up homeschool? And like, there was nothing about that worked. The other option was, I got to find a way to hustle and make money. And so the life that I knew was possible, because I knew the skills I had, was I wanted to build a virtual business where I could be home.
Yeah.
And so we planted our flag on that. So I didn't have to leave to go anywhere, but I had to. I mean, I don't know how many nights I was up till what hours in the morning, creating content and lectures and blogging, and the things that I would do to um, be able to be with them. Because if Nina's cleaning a house or working at Target, I have to be home and available to watch all four of these little kiddos. And um, so I guess the emotional piece of, like, for probably the first 2 years, I had this gut punch, sour stomach feeling of, I'm failing the most important people in my life.
That's a long time,
And
though, to,
it
to hold
is.
that. It's a long time.
Yeah, to wake up every day with the sour stomach, feeling like you're failing and not good enough, isn't fun. Um, but you see their little faces, and to them, life's good. Like, mom and dad are here,
Right.
and
Yeah. They don't
I
know
have
the
breakfast.
context.
And so, like, that they weren't suffering; they were enjoying life, and we were figuring it out. But their joy and their hugs, and um, the fact that they didn't go hungry. Nina and I probably skipped a couple meals, but um, that wasn't weird to them, that when we got there, we didn't have a kitchen sink or countertops, or that were. It was just, oh, cool, we're washing dishes outside. Like, it's almost like camping. Like, they didn't. None of that. I'm looking at it through the dad lens of, like, how in the world did I let my family
Yeah.
end up
How did I
out
let
there?
my, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just like, oh, it's almost like camping. Cool. Like,
That's
I get to
so
use the
cool,
hose now.
though. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Let me ask you a question. I wanted to ask you before we got, no, we didn't get sidetracked. We just rolled it. With the landlord situation, why did it come to a bankruptcy? Why did it come to such drastic measures? Why wasn't it able to be worked out?
Yeah, just the amount of money they took out of the account and stubbornly refused to change their position. It
How did
took
they take
all the
money out of your account? Was it just open to them?
so interesting. The bigger version, we had the same. We were moving out of our original facility into a bigger one. In After we had signed the papers and gotten the new one, the same company we were leaving bought the new one, and so um, the one of the challenges we ran into was, I had, in their mind, I had 6 more months left on the lease of where I left, and
Mm,
in my mind, I didn't. And depending on how you read the lease, I was right or they were right, and their lawyers were better than mine. And so they won, and they just took 6 months worth of um, all my working capital,
wow.
and that was the end of that. So I at that point, I couldn't start. I was not able to pay the staff, and you start losing staff, and they're not. You had to go down to the store and get another two, three, four people to start
No.
filling the holes, and it just unraveled. And um, we
And
had to.
and it's, isn't it amazing that this company, which sounds like whoever's running this place lacks compassion,
Oh
you're
my
going
gosh, our
to
win
sign a
win.
new lease.
Yeah. Darwinian capitalism is the best way. If they can squeeze you, they
Yeah.
will. Oh my gosh, they tried.
But you know what's really messed up and great at the same time is like how heartless do you have to be? And I know that a bunch of people like, look, I'm a hardcore entrepreneur. I'm a massive risk taker. Like, don't get me wrong. I still have a heart for people. And if somebody's like, hey man, look, I'm happy to pay you that 6 months, like I get it. But paying the 6 months all up front is gonna drain my operating account and I'm gonna go out of business. So like let's work a deal out here. I'll give you
Yeah.
half. But that's a great. See, I just don't understand at this point in my life, and I used to be a different guy. At this point in my life, I don't understand people who have a hard stance on one thing and yet can't understand. You don't have to agree. I'm just saying can't understand someone else's point of view and at least work it out. Now, with
Yeah.
that said, they actually did you a massive favor. They
Yeah.
got you
No, they
course
on some
corrected.
they liberated me on some level from a line of work that while I loved wasn't great for family life, like nights and weekends
Totally.
and running a team. And I have a simpler existence now that I adore.
Yeah.
And yeah, whether or not in their mind, I think it's numbers. Like, can we get somebody else in here faster and they can pay
Yeah.
us rent and and so it's their number. It's a gigantic,
Sure.
publicly traded company with
Yeah, they don't care.
shareholders that they're responsible to, and I'm just a number. And so
Yeah.
you, it is what it is. But my gosh, I look back on it and I can say liberated from.
Yeah.
I don't know what it wasn't a terrible life. I had a a chance to be with my kids, but so much more now. And I get to be so much more intentional and do more of like what I got to choose when I had my clean slate was what kinds of things everybody has to work at something. So what do I want to work at? And what life do I want to have? And how does work fit into it? And starting from that perspective, it clarified a lot for me about what I wanted my working years to be about, and or at least what I wanted the next chapter to be about, and the options that it gave me. It was important to us to be able to homeschool our kids, and so I had to figure that out.
Yeah. What's really cool about that is there's so many guys and women too that come through our coaching programs, our masterminds, or listen to this show and write to me. And one of the most common elements is the regret that they're feeling or facing now because they didn't make the decisions that they knew they should have back when they should have made them.
Hmm.
Right? I wish I would have hung out with my kids more. I wish I would have spent more time with my wife and I wouldn't be divorced because we have nothing in common now. And now my kids are out of the house. And because we're not parents anymore, we're going our separate ways. So in that respect, yeah, you got okay time with your kids, yet you didn't get the ideal, won't regret this in the future time.
Hmm.
And so, you talked a lot about belief in God and that trust and that faith. That's a okay, Christian, I hear you. Here you go. Like my wife
Yeah.
says it to me all the time. The universe will deliver the next thing when it shows when you show it, you have appreciation for the thing it just delivered. And if not, it's going to take it away. And it sounds like that business was amazing. However, and you were helping a lot of people. However, maybe in your brain you were just processing this, man, I don't want to miss these kids the time with them. I don't want this. And then here's the process. Bing, 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 right down the
Yeah,
line.
well, no, you're right. Even when we were in our heyday with the facility up and running, and we had, um, it was an impressive place, and to have that to be able to show my kids. But I started the ache then of what kind of dad am I? Like, when do I get to be with them, and how much longer does it take to build this to a point where I can go, okay, I can set some boundaries. I have other people in place. I can, and that goalpost kept getting moved, and so that ache to, you're right, to be there with them more. To it's a short season. The days are long, but the years are short when you have
Mhm.
kids, and to be able to be with them was something I deeply wanted. And I didn't like, I look at life kind of through a regret minimization filter and say, well, am I going to regret trying or not trying? Am I going to regret figuring out a way to be with them or not be with them? Am I going to regret trying this business or not trying this business? Am I going to
Yeah,
regret turning down that job or betting on myself? And I want to know what happens when I give my best effort. And sometimes that doesn't work out, and sometimes it does.
sure. Well, technically it always works out unless you
Yeah, I
die.
guess.
And then it
Well,
worked out the way it was supposed to in that case, right? So technically it
right.
always works out. It just might not be ideal for
The
you.
way I wanted it. Yeah.
Right, right. What about you as a man, as a human, just on the personal side, when you were going through all that, I just put myself in your shoes for a second and think, man, I like, you're sitting in this farmhouse and you're like, what the hell did my life come to? What have I done? My family, like they're suffering. What's going like how did you move yourself through those challenges internally? What kind of personal development were you into at that time?
Oh man, a lot. I was reading books and listening to podcasts, and I was consuming everyone's free content as fast as I possibly could.
Sure.
And in hindsight, what you get when you get people's free content is a whole bunch of puzzle pieces, and you don't even get to look at the box. You're not even sure what your puzzle you're putting together because it's incomplete, and so much of life is or a business is specialization, and so you get one person's special widget but they're missing three other pieces. And
Yep. Yep.
so I for me, I think that the voraciousness of learning and the urgency of provision were two of the things that just suck it up. If you don't feel like it today, you have to.
Yeah.
And so the speed at which I learned, and some of that, yeah, I can see how today that helps me because I consume large volumes of information quickly, and I can synthesize and fairly rapidly get to the heart of the matter and go, this is what I need to do. So when I'm wrestling with that, um, yeah, the heart hits you typically at night when you try to go to sleep and you don't have something here like filling your eyes or ears or something you have to be doing. You're in the shower. You're like, I, when I went for walks, I would listen to podcasts, so that didn't count. So it's basically in the shower and falling asleep. Those are the two times where the heart goes, "Can I say something?" And it lays into you with the dude.
Like during that quiet time, you mean, the downtime?
Yeah, yeah. The quiet. That's when your heart speaks up, and um, it's
Well,
painful. I mean, like I mentioned, that sour stomach was 2 years of feeling inadequate. It was 2 years of um, not feeling very masculine or very manly or very much like a provider. All the things guys want to feel, feeling
sure.
like you're in control and respected. And
Well, the
nope, you're
stuff
just
that we're programmed that we're supposed to feel.
right.
Yeah.
And even just going back to the town where we were, it just like I just felt ill being there. I didn't even want to be around it because I didn't want to pass by somebody I might know and be further embarrassed, even though not all of them had
Wasn't
ill
real, right?
feelings
Yeah.
for me. There's plenty of people I disappointed, but some of them would have been happy to see me. I just it was it. I've never felt more emotionally fragile. I actually had to have friends that I trusted that could think for me because I started to. It makes you doubt your own judgment sometimes,
Mhm.
and somebody else who I respected as a thinker, who I knew would have my best interest in mind, I would try to reach out to them and say, "Help me think through this because I don't have the option to bet wrong on this one or
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make a wrong turn here." So that was a big help to if you're in those funks and like we all get in them, darn it, reach out to somebody, find your trusted person, and do not try to do that by yourself because you're not smart enough to think of all of it. And if you're an emotional, then you're even less qualified to be solving some of those problems.
Yeah.
And you need somebody emotionally removed from your situation to help you find the wisdom that you don't have in those moments. And that was one of my big lifelines was a few friends I could talk to or that would just call me because they knew I needed somebody to talk to and I
Yeah.
wasn't as likely to reach out myself.
That was your inner circle, man. Something that you brought up. Listen, the cool part is all this stuff is very common. The patterns are very similar among the the
Hmm.
the majority of people. They're very similar. You talked about being busy, like distractions, listening to podcasts, and the time that the heart was speaking up was when things were quiet in the shower or going to bed.
Hmm.
And that was one thing that I had a very it was actually at a church church in the Church of the Nativity.
Hmm.
Nativity. They really ground that into me. I actually went to this church before I sought my coaches,
Hmm.
and I just felt called there. I'm not sure why. And actually, no, I do know why now, because the guy that built this place took it from a 40 person to a 15,000 person mega church, and I loved his business sense. The way he ran this place was so tight, and but and at the same time, like everybody loved working there. And one thing he said to me was, just embrace the quiet. Just embrace
Hmm.
that quiet, because in that quiet you're going to hear the answers that you need. You might not want to hear them. You'll hear the ones that you need to hear, and you'll know
Hmm.
what to do. And you can run that by me or run that by other people, and you can know. Yet if you try and avoid the feelings and the pain, if you try and distract yourself to think that you're going to somehow miraculously get out of this through over time in distraction, it's not going to work like that.
Yeah.
Like, and what he said to me is every day God is going to put that same thing back in front of you until you face it. Right. And I've subsequently done some plant medicine ceremonies that the shaman said the only way out is through. You can't go around it, under it, over it. You got to go through it. It could be hot, cold, wet, rainy. There could be snakes in there. It doesn't matter. You have to go through it. If what you see on the other side is what you want, you got to go through it. Must.
Hmm.
And so you then brought up a really good point about mentorship and finding people that you can count on in your inner circle. Who were
Hmm.
these people? On were they friends of yours? That I mean, how did you know you could trust them?
But just having a history with them, and
Got it.
they had been slugging it out with me either on the support side as I was trying to figure out how to hold the business together, or had been friends before when business was fine,
Yeah.
and we had just done life together. And so, um, one in particular had spent so much time thinking with me on all the realities. Got about 10 years on me and MBA training and
Nice.
military training. Just a brilliant
Sharp.
thinking,
Yeah.
rational mind
Yeah.
that could look at those types of things. And um, we had earned each other's trust by that point, and I had seen him and the way he handles other friends when they need help, and I like that's the kind of guy you want in your corner when what hits the fan. Um, so yeah, it's been a blessing to have. It wasn't many. It was probably 3 or 4 guys I could call on that would listen and think strategically with me about what was next.
Yeah. So something that I that helped me get through it, and it's an exercise that we use in our coaching programs and our live events and our retreats, is called the future stage presentation. And when I would sit there and just think about how am I going to ever get out of this? Like, how's anybody going to trust me? I know I
Hmm.
didn't do anything wrong. However, how long is it going to take me to get out of this? Right. And I
Hmm.
kept comparing myself. And that's a question I want to ask you too, is about comparison. I just kept thinking about this and thinking about this. And then I thought, you know what, dude, you're a coach. Like I had my coaching business for 5 years at that point.
Hmm.
You're a coach. People are going to ask you a question of how you got through this, and you got to tell them, and you got to be able to help them. So you must get through this in an organized, systematized fashion, not like you ended up in Atlantic City in a gutter somewhere and you hit rock bottom and your wife left you and you blew all the money. Like, not that scenario. You need to take the reins here and still be in flow of this thing, yet take the reins of your life. So I created this thing called the future stage presentation, where I knew in a year from now, I'm going to be on stage and someone's going to say to me, hey, well, what hardships have you had? And I'm going to go, here
Hmm.
was my hardship and here's how I got through it. And here's who I am and how I am that person today because of that hardship and these 5 things. And you can learn from them too. And they're free. And I give them out on this
Hmm.
podcast. By the way, they're a free resource um, in our mental purpose or our quitters club. Like they're a free resource. So anybody listening, like you want that, message us and we'll send it out to you. But like, did you ever think about that? Like as a coach, how am I going to make it through this to teach other people how to make it through hard situations or tough
Oh,
times?
that was probably one of my dominant thoughts.
Was
Actually,
it?
it was that somebody put it to me early on when we were just kind of transitioning life to being out in the country. Of you don't need to be a PhD at something. You need to be a second grader teaching a first grader. You just
Yeah.
need to be a little ahead. And in hindsight, I find the people who are the best at teaching something are ones who didn't learn it 20 years ago. They're ones who just learned it recently
Fair. Yeah.
because they know what it's like to not know it. They understand what it's like to go through it. And so I just kind of took that mentality of who am I just a little further ahead on the journey and how can I add value, right? Not what does it cost, but just how can I go and be a voice of value? How can I deliver something that says, whoa, that was helpful. I wonder what I'd get if I paid the man. And to go to the learning binge that I went on, um, whether it was marketing or whether it was psychology or whether it was health, nutrition, fitness, whatever, it was something that deepened my toolkit of understanding humans. And it
Mm.
clicked for me that if I just study human physiology and human nature at depth, I can speak to the human heart and I can help with problems that I've been through or been qualified to help with. And to not lose sight of that really became kind of an anchoring principle of I don't need to coach everyone. I just need to find somebody who I know I can help.
Yeah.
And that was really one thing that got me through.
Yeah, I love hearing that, man. That's something that people ask me all the time. How do I become a coach like you? And I go, well, you'll never be a coach like me because you're not me. You have to be
Right.
a coach like you, like you
Yep.
want to be. And you have to pick and choose who you'd like to serve and how you'd like to serve them. And I feel like my authentic self came out once I decided who I wanted to be. And it
Hmm.
wasn't that I shifted and changed into that person. It was that I removed all the pieces that weren't that person. And me
Hmm.
was just standing there. It's the Michelangelo theory, the David theory. And so you, you hit it right on the head. You don't have to be a PhD teaching a freshman. You have to be a freshman 2 weeks in teaching another freshman who's just starting. That's it.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's a coaching journey. Now, if you want
Yeah.
to talk about some deep level stuff, like you want to train people on like Ironmans and Mr. Olympia competitions, you probably need a lot more time on task. You want to train people like Aaron and I do with childhood trauma clearing, things like that, be
Right.
responsible. Don't
Yep.
do that. Don't try and don't learn it in a book and then go try and coach that. Yet if you want to coach somebody on goal setting that's worked for you, or a morning routine, or little things like that, how to grab 3 great things from a podcast, every time, teach it all day long. In fact, you should teach it all day long because that's how you get time on task. That's how you learn your style, what people like, what you said that worked, what you said that didn't work. That's great. I love that advice, man. I absolutely love that. What kind of podcasts were you listening to, by the way? Were they business? Were they all personal development? Were they a mix, religious?
Oh man, so many. I could probably list several. So I listened to Psychotactics. He's got the 3 month vacation. I listened to Story Brand.
Hmm,
I listened to Clients on Demand. A lot of Frank Kern, a lot of Darren Hardy. Just I mean, so many different people who were either successful or who were able to teach me the skills I was lacking. So that almost every big name in marketing who has a lot of free content, I went through their stuff
got it.
and dove deep into what does it take to and I actually got pretty darn good at marketing. And so that started an Upwork profile of like, well, shoot, I can help you build this and this and this. And
Right.
that started bridging the income so I could spend more time doing the coaching I wanted to be doing. And it's so now I have a marketing skill set to pair with a personal growth health coaching skill set. And so there were other like the Weston A. Price Foundation, the Wise Traditions podcast was a big one that taught me so much, exposed me to so many different ways of thinking about health, um, and so several different health focused podcasts, and anybody who would teach me anything about marketing really were the two
I
main
love
things
that.
I studied.
How are you handling mental health? Like your mental health couldn't have been dialed
Currently,
in. No, no, back then.
back then, um,
Like
I
mental
don't
and
know how
emotional
much
health.
yeah, I mean, mental and emotional. It's what gave me hope every time was this book, this because so many books, so many
Yeah.
podcasts. This there's there if I get one good idea out of this thing, it was worth it. And so the I kept pushing the hope button just with every new day, every new
Mm.
podcast, every new book. Then I listen at 1.5 speed or 2 speed, and um, I watch and listen and learn with such intention and such a drive to say, I need to. This person has spent years or decades thinking on these problems. I get the best of what they've distilled down in this book or in this course, and so that was one of the mental flossing things I did. That was kind of that would if you have hope, you have a reason to keep going, and to be able to look my wife in the eyes and to legitimately say I'm trying, and for her to have a similar response to what your wife said to you of, I know you're going to figure it out,
Yeah.
and I'm not going anywhere, and we've got the patience. We are going to make it through this. That to your point, it's so centering and anchoring. Like, okay, I can do this, and I have a God who's not going to give up on me.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I'm here. So blessed be His name, and let me get up and do it again. And whether it's fatigue or whether it's frustration of like that didn't work. I don't know how many. Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, you have 10 ideas, and you're lucky if one of them's good,
Right. Right.
right? And so
Right.
you just put art out in the world, and so to just become unattached to this better work and just like this might work,
Right.
that energy comes out as you do it. And so I had to. It's a daily thing. One of the verses that means a lot to me is we've not been given a spirit of fear, but a
Mm.
spirit of power and love and a sound mind. And so I tried my best to live that. When I get that sour stomach, it's like, wait a minute, that's coming from a place of fear. That's coming from nowhere good. So what does it mean to come from a place of power? to know that my identity, my life has been secured, and I am who I am because he says I'm valuable, and he still has me here for something to do. And right now, it's figured out how to feed these kids.
Yeah.
And so to be able to anchor to, okay, well, what does it mean to be powerful and loving and have a sound mind? I can't just be highly emotional and all over the board and freaking out and chasing every shiny object. I have to be methodical, and I have to own it, that I still get to be powerful, that I still have something to give. I still have a contribution to make to this world. And my song is not over. Or this book is not being finished, is not finished being written yet. And pastor said to me many years before, that is the idea, or the season I'm telling you about. It's just, he's fascinated by who we can become. Like, what other amazing ideas are out there that will totally blow my mind. And I'm one book, one thought, one conversation away from something that can change the trajectory of life. And I still have that to this day. I'm so open to conspiracy theories because I'm like, there's probably something I can learn from this. There's probably some truth tucked away in here. Like, what do you know that I don't? And to
Yeah.
be able to go through life fascinated now rather than just frustrated, it is such a healthy switch. And so a lot of Jim Rohn was in there, a lot of kind of the circuit of motivational speakers, if you will, who just helped me. Hang on, this is nothing that isn't common to the rest of our species. So if other people made it, I know I can too. And I would sometimes listen to pretty fantastic stories of overcoming to be like, okay, well, I don't have it that bad. I have my
Right.
health and I have
That
my
helped
life
me
to get
too.
through that. Yeah,
Yep, that helped me too. Man, it's not that bad. It's only money. Like, how
right. I
great
can
did
make
it
more.
feel to you? And I have a point behind this. How great did it feel to you when your wife trusted you so deeply and honestly and authentically? How did that
Yeah,
feel to you?
it's everything because that a spouse, like unlike any person in the world, they have the most leverage to make you feel capable or incapable, secure or insecure. And to know that the most important person in my universe thinks highly of me and still respects me, and um, does her best to reinforce that, um, even when I'm not at my best sometimes.
Yeah, I
Too
love
much
that,
not
and I
not self
brought
loving
that
me.
up because if there are people listening, man or woman, doesn't matter. If you don't have full trust from your spouse and you don't
Hmm.
know what that feels like, the way we're describing it, like this beautiful, like, wow, man, somebody trusts me more than I do right now. That's
Hmm.
amazing. If you don't have that, it's on you. It's your fault because you haven't created it, in my opinion. And if
Hmm.
you want to create it, it's possible to create it. Then you have to start working on who you are and how you're showing up and what kind
Hmm.
of space you're creating for that person. And then they will have the space to create for you. Yet, for those of us that are leaders, again, in my opinion, you got to do it first. You got to push first and go out on the
Yeah.
limb and create that space. And your partner's not going to trust you until you actually trust you. Now, there are times when I didn't trust myself and my wife did. And I'm sure there's times when you were like, I don't think I'm doing anything right here. And your wife was like, no, you're good. Everything's good. I trust you. We're cool.
Hmm.
So that feeling is something that I want everybody to experience. And you get that from your personal growth and development. You get
Hmm.
that from becoming the real authentic version of you, which by the
Hmm.
way, your spouse probably sees and also sees the fake
Yeah.
side of you too, like
Yeah.
the
Easily.
inauthentic.
Yeah. No, it's the ancient law of sowing and reaping, right?
Right.
If you don't sow that, if you don't make any relational equity deposits, if you don't give the other people in your life the gift of unconditional love and psychologically safe spaces, and the knowing that they can't get away from your affection and that you're going to be there no matter what. If you don't give that first, you're highly unlikely to get it first. And
Sure.
so
Sure.
I think we had built that by that time.
I love to hear that, man. Well, look, this has been a jam packed, jam packed episode, and we didn't get into half the stuff I actually wanted to talk about. I just really enjoy you telling that story because I know that there are people that just need to hear that. They're going through some
Mm.
tough stuff, and they need to know that maybe it's not that bad, and they probably have questions for you. And if you have questions for Christian, just you figure out how to
Reach
get a
out.
hold of him on Instagram and you write him and ask him. Like, I want to ask you, where was all the rest of your money? Why did that 6 months of reserves for your rent, why did that bankrupt you? Where was the rest of your
Well,
money?
that was it. That we had put all our eggs in that basket of
Oh,
running
got
that
it.
business, and you for 9 years that was where it went, and sure enough, so that's so many lessons to extract from
Sure,
that, and
sure.
it's not like I was a perfect business person. There's
Of
always things
course.
you can do better, and so it's not it's my own shortcomings and an unfortunate situation, and there you have it.
Perfect
So
storm.
it's they're hard, painful, expensive lessons, but they're wasted if we don't do something with them.
You know what I imagine, like whatever's on the other side of this life, I imagine like let's say that there's the hall of judgment. There's a room of judgment. There's some kind of judgment on the other side.
Hmm.
As I get older, I start to realize like whether that's true or not, my kids are looking at me and my kids are going, "What is my dad actually doing?"
Hmm.
And so now my daughter, when we pass a homeless person, like when we're going to get something to eat, my daughter will now say, because I programmed her this way, "Hey dad, there's a homeless person over there. Let's get him something to eat." And I'm
Hmm.
like, I now know that in that room of judgment or that hall of judgment or whatever it is, like I'm now shifting to doing even more for humanity and society besides just coaching and helping people, free themselves of internal restriction and constraint and end that internal struggle and suffering and build a business and have a better marriage and make more money and quit their job. All those things, those are awesome as a business. And yet I still have to show up as a human. Yet in my
Hmm.
personal life, I'm still of service to the world, which I never thought about before like 2 years ago. And moving to
Mm.
California, especially, it was something that was really wide open to me, like really glaring in my face. Like you gotta do
Hmm.
this, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure there's no shortage of suffering and need in this world. And when you are humbled enough to remember what it was like to have need and to be in a tough place, it gives you so much more empathy and compassion for people and a, a relatability
Yeah.
to struggle that just makes you humble and authentic, much more likely. And so yeah, I have similar thoughts, and I picture the man in the arena or the great cloud of witnesses looking down and just cheering me like he got up again, like
Right.
seriously, right? And whether it's like Cinderella Man was a movie where I'm like, oh, like that takes guts to get back up after that, and
Yeah.
but that's like that's part of the warrior part of being a man is we want to like bring on the struggle. I'm here to find out what it makes me. I'm glad it's hard. It wouldn't be worth it if it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
And when that grit hits you, then it's just like, clear my throat. I'm gonna do my best to deal with my own crisis of limitations and not overestimate my capacity here. But I now I'm on mission, and so I know I've learned so many lessons that are so helpful to people, and it is a joy to spare them a lot of wrong turns along the way.
Yeah. Well, dude, really, really, really enjoyed hearing your story and really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Where can people find you?
You can find me. Our coaching business is truewholehuman.com. I also write a blog that is at deconstructingconventional.com. I'm used about all things health and healing and fitness, and even expanding that to have our own podcast here in the near future. And then we're really reducing our footprint on traditional social media, so you can find us on social at truewholehuman.social. And if somebody wants to reach out to me personally, they can just email me Christian at truewholehuman.com.
Cool. That's awesome, man. It's got to be a good feeling to be on the other side of that now and then
Oh
giving
gosh.
this story back. And that's only 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Big stuff can happen. People ask me all the time, "Hey, what's your 10-year vision?" And I'll say, "Look, I've got a general idea of what it looks like in 10 years. 10 years is such a long time. I'm not
Yes.
going to map out 10 years. I'll map out maybe three, maybe. Because 5 to 10 years, dude, your whole life could be completely different. You're
Yeah.
like 10 years ago, I was broke with hadn't paid my mortgage in 2 years, cars getting repoed, and I was teaching swimming lessons for $10 an hour. I didn't have a real estate license yet. Like that
Yeah.
was me 10 years ago. How the hell could I imagine that I live in Southern California, be a high level men's personal development coach, run a really great business, have 2 kids? Like, how the hell would I know that? You
Right.
know?
No, it's
So
life takes turns and you don't know where they're going, but it is fun to look back. And I'm with you. I maybe think 6 or 12 months ahead.
yeah,
3, 5, 10 years. Who knows? I
who
just hope
knows?
what I'm doing in
Right.
6 months is way better than now.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. All right, Christian. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for being here. And audience, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.